Today I will display you a comedy, fantasy, horror movie from 2012, titled Dark Shadows. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. In the year 1760, the Collins' own circle of relatives leaves Liverpool and sails to Maine, New England to enlarge the own circle of relatives empire. They begin an exceptionally a success fishing commercial enterprise that lets in them to set up the city of Colin Game and their very own grand estate, Collinwood. Even if their cash grows, the proprietor makes certain that his son, Barnabas Collins, is raised understanding that own circle of relatives usually comes first. 15 years later, Barnabas has an affair with one of the own circle of relatives' servants, Angelique, who's secretly a witch. When she asks him for his love and now no longer simply his frame, Barnabas tells her he would not feel that manner approximately her. In order revenge, she casts a spell to kill his dad and mom. Barnabas suspects something darkish prompted such an coincidence. Angelique overhears them asserting their love for every different and receives jealous, so she makes use of her magic once more to make Josette leap off a cliff. Unable to store her in time, Barnabas jumps after her, however not like Josette. He does survive the autumn due to the fact Angelique has cursed him to come to be a vampire in order that his suffering might by no means end. Then she gathers an irritated mob of townspeople, turns them towards Barnabas with the aid of using pointing out he is a monster, and collectively all of them seize him and lock him in a coffin that they then bury with inside the forest. Years later, in 1972, Victoria Winters is on a teach trip to Collinsport due to the fact she's visible an advert from the Collins' own circle of relatives searching out a governess. Victoria isn't always her actual call, however she's walking far from domestic and would not need human beings to recognize their actual identification, so chooses Victoria from a poster at the teach. When she arrives on the estate, she's obtained with the aid of using Willie Loomis, the caretaker, who explains that the mansion, which isn't always in a very good situation nowadays, must have carrier of 100 servants, however it is simply him and Mrs. Johnson. Later at dinner, Victoria meets the relaxation of the own circle of relatives. There is Elizabeth's brother Roger Collins, who's a loafer, Elizabeth's youngster daughter. Carolyn Stoddard, who's going via a rebellious phase, Roger's son David Collins, who isn't always doing properly on account that his mom died whilst he changed into 5 and thinks he can see her ghost, and Dr. Julia Hoffman, a psychiatrist employed to address David's problems however spends maximum of her time drunk. Victoria sympathizes with David and tells him she believes in ghosts too, which Elizabeth would not take properly. Moments later, whilst Victoria is getting prepared for bed, she sees Josette's ghost within inside the hallway. She tells her he is coming earlier than going to the lobby and circling the chandelier a couple of times, and after repeating he is coming, she falls the identical manner she did that day on the cliff and disappears. Meanwhile, inside the forest, a production team constructing a McDonald's is doing a little digging and reveals Barnabas' coffin. They open it to peer what's in her, and now that he's unfastened, Barnabas proceeds to feed on each unmarried worker, apologizing for his many years' vintage hunger. Afterward, he makes his manner to the mansion on foot, staring at and getting harassed with the aid of using all of the generation and contemporary day apparel at the manor at the same time is blanketed in blood. When he makes it to the estate, he reveals Willie with inside the lawn and hypnotizes him with his vampire powers to offer him the records he wishes. He additionally asks him to easy him up earlier than taking him in her. While looking to introduce himself to the children, Elizabeth interrupts him and asks him to speak in private, expressing her suspicions of his identification and pronouncing all of the magical myths surrounding the own circle of relatives are simply fairy tales. Barnabas proves he is telling the reality with the aid of starting a mystery room now no longer even Elizabeth knew approximately, and guarantees to convey lower back the own circle of relatives glory with all hidden treasure from that room. The subsequent day, all through breakfast, she introduces him to the others as Barnabas III, a remote relative from England. The own circle of relatives starts off evolve speak commercial enterprise and that they give an explanation for to Barnabas that the Collins fishing empire is gone, now the whole region is dominated with the aid of using Angel Bay seafood. At that second, Victoria enters the room, and Barnabas cannot assist flirting with her due to the fact she appears so just like Josette. Back in city, Angelique continues to be alive beneath the call Angie Bouchard, and she or he is now the effective founder and CEO of Angel Bay Seafood. When her personnel inform her approximately the coincidence with inside the forest, she is going there to peer it with her very own eyes and is greatly surprised to discover the open coffin. Not losing any time, she fast drives to Collinwood, wherein she exchanges a few insults with Elizabeth earlier than Barnabas takes her away to speak in private. As quickly as he closes the door at the back of him, Angelique kisses him, then tells him Collinsport is now her Angel Bay, way to the fishing commercial enterprise she's began out on cause to ruin. The Collins. When the organization starts of evolved walking smoothly, Barnabas hires fishermen with the aid of using hypnotizing the captains operating for Angelique and making them alternate sides. In his unfastened time, he maintains to study generation and spends time with Victoria. One evening, after Roger sees him get out of the name of the game room with treasure in his hands, Barnabas is discovered with the aid of using Julia, who thinks he acts very bizarre and invitations him to her office. She hypnotizes him and receives him to admit his mystery, so she leaves him at the back of to go yell at Elizabeth for having stored it from them. Elizabeth convinces her now no longer to visit the police whilst she factors out that Julia must be fascinated with the aid of using him, and she or he is, so she desires him to live and research greater approximately him. Sometime later, Barnabas asks Carolyn for recommendation on the way to courtroom docket contemporary day girls. Carolyn tells him he wishes to drop all of the vintage-timey mindset and hold out with cool. The subsequent day, Julia starts of evolved giving him blood transfusions to peer if which could treatment as vampirism. When Barnabas compliments her, Julia reminds him of the doctor-affected person confidentiality idea and receives on her knees in the front of him to delight him. However, Angelique explains it is a rely of satisfaction and sporting on what her grandmother began out, a manner to spoil the Collins' own circle of relatives. She requires Barnabas to have an assembly and provide him the possibility to promote his organization to hers, however he refuses. Angelique reminds him she most effective desires his love and threatens to kill Victoria if he would not deliver it to her. Barnabas offers in and makes light to her all around the office, destroying maximum of it as they go.
Il me faut à présent souiller les segments les plus intimes de ton anatomie de femme.
After they are done, he realizes it changed into a mistake and tells her he cannot be with her, so Angelique guarantees to spoil him. Barnabas maintains to peer Julia for blood transfusions at the same time as Victoria starts of evolved having desires of the time she noticed Josette's ghost as a baby and her dad and mom dispatched her to an asylum for it. When she wakes up, she reveals Josette's ghost touring her once more, requesting her assist earlier than disappearing. In the morning at the same time as having breakfast, Barnabas broadcasts he desires to throw a ball for the entire city to remind them that is the ruling own circle of relatives here. Carolyn explains to him that these days human beings throw happenings, now no longer balls, and offers him a few recommendations approximately contemporary day parties. When the night time of the ball comes, she discovers he hadn't been joking whilst he stated he might get some things she mentions, and now Alice Cooper is gambling stay at their party. Since he isn't always partial to the music, Barnabas leaves to take a stroll across the residence and reveals David looking after the coach room rather than the worker, due to the fact his dad has asked. Barnabas sends him away and climbs the outdoor wall to peek via the window, locating Roger, being intimate with the worker and stealing wallets from human beings' coats. Afterward, he meets with Veronica on a balcony, wherein she tells him she is aware of approximately his emotions for her. She looks like she will be able to inform him something and that she's recognized him forever, and confesses she's usually felt something pulling her to Collingswood. When he attempts to kiss her, she unconsciously pulls lower back due to the fact that is the primary time Victoria spent a few years with inside the asylum, with most effective medical doctors and Josette's ghost as organization. And she or he's been positioned via dozens of painful remedies to fix her. But she by no means gave up her will and someday she controlled to get away via a window. While trying to find someplace to go, Josette pointed on the governess advert with inside the newspaper. And she or he knew what she needed to do. She feels it domestic at Collinswood and she or he's advanced emotions for Barnabas too, which she expresses with the aid of using eventually kissing him. This is visible with the aid of using Angelique, who simply arrived on the party, and now she's livid. The subsequent day, Barnabas is going to peer Julia to double the efforts on making him human so he may be with Victoria, most effective to discover her transfusing his vampire blood into her frame. She has by no means been interested by him turning into human, she most effective desires to make herself immortal. As punishment for breaking the own circle of relatives' trust, she bites her and kills her, now no longer noticing her fangs growing. Then he asks Willie to take him at the boat to the center of the sea to drop her frame there with a brick. Next, he reveals Roger looking to get entry to the name of the game room with the treasure, so he decides to offer him a choice. He can begin turning into a hired dad to David, or he can take a few cash Barnabas will deliver him and go away to by no means be visible once more. Roger chooses the cash and leaves the estate, destroying David's coronary heart. When the child runs lower back to his room, he nearly receives hit with the aid of using the disco ball while he is disconnecting from the ceiling, so Barnabas makes use of his super velocity to store him and finally ends up beneath the solar, which starts of evolved lighting fixtures him on fire. Now the entire own circle of relatives is aware of his mystery, and David and Victoria run far from him in disgust. Getting desperate, Barnabas is going to peer Angelique, who refuses to dispose of the curse and receives him to confess he killed Julia. She then makes a proposal. They are able to rule the fishing empire collectively as companions and lovers. Or she'll position him lower back with inside the box. Barnabas tells her to visit hell and attempts to go away, however her personnel are ready on the alternative facet of the door with a coffin that Angelique pushes him into. After final it with chains, they position it in a van and force to the cemetery, however most effective. After Angelique makes use of a spell to make the Collins organization constructing explode. The coffin is deserted in a mausoleum, most effective to be discovered with the aid of using David a few moments later, who found out approximately Barnabas being in risk due to the fact the ghost of his mom informed him. Back in city, human beings are looking how the police and the firemen are looking after the fire. Angelique suggests up and performs a recording of Barnabas admitting he killed Julia, using it to rally the city towards the Collins. The irritated mob, collectively with the police officers and Angelique arrive at Collingswood proper after Barnabas receives there too, and he is inclined to admit in the event that they do not do something to his own circle of relatives however take Angelique with him as properly. The sheriff attempts to shoot Barnabas however glaringly it does not anything to him, so he proceeds to chunk Angelique and make her pores and skin crack so as to reveal she's a monster too. As the sheriff sends all of the human beings away, Barnabas starts of evolved preventing towards Angelique. With the assist of Elizabeth's shotgun and Carolyn, who exhibits to be a werewolf. Sadly, they show to be no fit for a witch's powers, especially whilst Angelique enchants the residents to assault its very own circle of relatives. As she tortures them, she confesses she changed into the only that killed Barnabas' dad and mom, David's mom, and additionally dispatched a werewolf to chunk Carolyn in her crib, due to the fact she's usually been the curse at the back of the own circle of relatives' misery. David suggests up then and sends his mom's ghost towards Angelique, throwing her across the room and making her crash towards the chandelier, which drops to the ground and kills her. As the own circle of relatives flees the residence, that is now on fire, Barnabas offers Angelique a closing goodbye, and the witch dies after ripping her coronary heart out of her chest and giving it to him. However, it most effective turns into dust. Barnabas cannot discover Victoria anywhere, and David's mother tells them she's on the cliff. As the own circle of relatives watches the residence crumble, Barnabas races to forestall Victoria from jumping, however she would not concentrate to him. She's only a human that lives with inside the mild at the same time as Barnabas will stay with inside the shadows forever so that they cannot be collectively. This miserable idea makes Victoria leap, and prefer it occurred many years ago. Barnabas jumps after her, however this time, he bites her to convert her right into a vampire earlier than she hits the ground. Now she's an immortal creature like him, they may be collectively forever, and the couple shares a kiss. In the lowest of the ocean, Julian's frame opens her eyes, revealing she's come to be a vampire too.